This might be the question I get asked the most. What should be my goal marathon time or goal marathon pace? And I've coached hundreds of athletes all using this same method, which takes this goal marathon time from a magical guess or shot in the dark to a systematic process across the training cycle that has everybody standing on the start line confident in that training and their goals. All right, you've clicked on this video for one of three reasons that I can think of. One, you like our videos. Thank you, we really appreciate that. Two, you've never run a race before at this particular distance and you want to know how you should set your time goals and your pace goals. Or three, you've run a race at this distance and you want to know, how do I move to the next level? How do I plan my next goal pace or goal time? Let's deal with the easiest one first. If you've never run these distances, 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, I'm just going to put a handy screenshot here. Pause the video. This is the calculation that you do. It's very rough, but it gives you a starting point. And there are so many factors that it is not an exact science. That's the bit that we're coming to, is a more exciting process once you have the baseline. We're going to deal with marathon because that's just easier, but the system that we use, you can use it across any distance. That's the exciting bit. And it's based off of the scientific method, as in the process that scientists use to test pretty much everything. We just transport it into our running. To be honest with you, I would also say, just as a caveat, if you're running your first marathon, I genuinely would recommend that you run by heart rate and feel rather than a goal pace. And then once you've run that race, use the experience to set that benchmark, that new level that you can try and get faster than. Okay, this is the exciting bit, I think, anyway, and I'm going to use my journey, my experience in real time so that it makes sense for you. But the scientific process that I use starts with an observation. Now, my observation was that my current PB is 2:44. That happened in Chicago in 2024. I've had a couple of bites of beating that since then, but have been derailed by very, very hot weather and injury. But after the observation comes the hypothesis. My hypothesis in this case is I think I might be capable of running a 2:39 marathon. But it's not as simple as that. It doesn't just stop there and then I just train blindly towards that and then on race day I do it. There's three more parts of the process. The next bit is experimentation, and we're going to show you all the sessions we use to experiment, but that's the part of basically the training, the 18 weeks. I'm doing a bunch of experiments within the training that are going to tell me whether 2:39 is a realistic outcome or not. And on top of that, you have analyze, which is looking into the data of each of those sessions and what are they telling me about what am I going to possibly be able to do. And then the fifth part of this process, the scientific method, is conclusion. By the time I get to the taper, so probably 15, 16 weeks into the training, maybe 2 to 3 weeks out from the race, I'm going to look at all of the data I've accumulated across the previous 16 weeks, and I'm going to look at whether I think that running the pace that I need to for a 2:39 marathon is realistic, or whether I have to adapt. And by the way, you can adapt faster, but also potentially slower. You have to give yourself a realistic chance of race day rather than just going in blindly and going, no, I'm running the 3:45 a kilometer I need to run a 2:39. Doesn't work like that. That's my process. Essentially, start with a time, do a bunch of experiments during that period. I call it training. And at the end of the training, before we go into the taper, can I make that time? Is it realistic? That's the simplified process. And we use 5 sessions across our training and across our weeks to guide this conclusion that you can use too. Well, isn't it lucky that this week I've got a bunch of runs during my marathon training that I'm going to do that are going to help me determine my eventual goal marathon pace. And as you know, I've already set what I want at the start of the block, but I wants don't get necessarily. So I'll take you through that process. And today, threshold session, that's one. But on top of that, probably my favourite, 800 repeats, and that is blazing down, I'm telling you. Okay, first of all, what is threshold? Threshold, theoretically, and you have to remember this because it's so different in everybody, it's the kind of pace that you can run for around an hour. Some people can run at it for 20 minutes, some people can run at it for 2 hours like Kipchoge, but it's the top of zone 3, bottom of zone 4. It's the point at which your body accumulates lactate too fast to be able to flush it out, and you have to slow down eventually. So
I'll explain why this session is a really great indicator once I get going. So I've just done the goal marathon pace now. I've got 800 repeats at threshold. Is it, what's the colour?
Red flashing.
All right, you're on camera.
Now, a few things to make clear first. We train using heart rate, feel and pace, and we watch how they interact with each other. None of these metrics on their own are good enough, but it does mean you need to know your heart rate zones. Not what your watch guesses, not what Strava tells you, not what anything else tells you. You need to have done a test for them. But you can easily get that data from a 5 or a 10k race or an all-out 5k time trial. You just need that. None of this system works without it, and I'll link a video at the end of this one that will teach you how to get that information. So in this threshold session, I'm running at the feel, pace and heart rate that I know will make my body better at clearing lactate. And it will also make all of the paces underneath it, which include my goal marathon pace, feel easier.
So this 800 session that we're doing, some people call it Yasso 800s, but regardless, what it is a good indicator roughly, and I say roughly, of your goal marathon pace. So that first rep for me was just 2:43. I'm aiming for 2:39. I've got 2 blocks left, so probably where I want to be. I've just got to maintain that for the next 10.
So in these sessions, if I can eventually consistently be hitting paces that are 15 to 30 seconds per kilometre faster than what I want to run my marathon at, and I take into account that I run in a furnace, then I know I'm on track. But I don't expect to be in that range immediately, or certainly not consistently. It'll happen over the whole training cycle. Maybe I'm going to hit those paces a little bit now, and hopefully I can consistently see those paces in the coming months. It is a process, and it's just part of the puzzle.
So the way that I look at it is, over the course of an entire block, I'll do these 800s, I'll do, I can't even think. I do 800s, kilometre repeats, 1200s, sometimes 16s, even 2s. And in those repeats, what I do is I build up a bank of knowledge about what pace I'm running my lactate threshold at. And, you know, the first thing to note is I do it by heart rate. And the second thing is, if I'm running my goal marathon pace and I am at lactate threshold, that can't be my goal marathon pace. So that's my threshold session done. And week in, week out, if I can consistently hit paces of, let's say, in the 3:25 a kilometre to 3:30 a kilometre, regardless of the rep length, then that for me is my first good indicator that maybe 3:45 a kilometre is realistic. But you can't, it's not just threshold. I'm not just relying solely on that. I use a bunch of metrics throughout the week. So this is session 1. I'll take you to session 2.
So threshold runs are kind of like my baseline, as in, you know, if you're running at threshold and that's your marathon pace, no chance. But we have to use other sessions to inform us what there might be a chance of. So then I go on to easy runs, which probably make up the bulk of my entire week. And I use these less so in that a lot of my easy runs are way slower than my goal race pace. I'm just trying to train my aerobic base pace. But there is one thing that I sometimes do within my easy runs that I have found really, really helpful. And that is that sometimes, maybe for an hour, maybe for 10k, I either pick a distance or I pick a time, and it's not often, but I will run at the top of my zone 2 heart rate for an hour, and then I'll come back and I'll look at the details. I'll look at, well, what pace did that equal? Because when you run a marathon, generally you're aiming to be in and around top of zone 2 into low zone 3 and then hold there for as long as possible. And it might rise at the end of the race, but that's where I experience most of my marathons are spent at, and also the people that I coach. So in theory, if I go out and every now and then in some different circumstances, different weathers, I run for an hour at the top of my zone 2 heart rate, and then I come back and I look at what that pace was, it gives me a good indicator of where I am. So if I can run an hour top of zone 2, and let's say that that equals a 4:10 kilometre in this weather, by the way, that would probably be a 4-minute kilometre when it came to a temperate climate. And after a taper, it might be a 3:55 or a 3:50 kilometre. So it just gives me, again, another indicator of where maybe I'm at. And maybe I'll do that like 1 time per block, so 4 times overall within the training. But generally, this is the easiest one, because easy runs, I try and keep easy, and I just make sure I'm building that big aerobic base.
So we've touched on threshold runs, which is zone 4, and we've talked about easy runs, which is zone 2, and you know where that leads us. This is a 2-for-1 that I'm going to give you now. This is the kind of zone 3 area that I like to work on for a number of reasons actually, but generally we find that zone 3, when it comes to our heart rate zones, is where we spend the majority of our time in every marathon. So it makes sense to practice in this zone. And as easy as I can put it, we spend half of our time, as in the first half of the training block, as in where I am right now, at tempo, which is what we would call middle of zone 3. And then in the second half of the training block, we get a little bit more specific where we start to do marathon pace work, which could be middle of zone 3, could also be low zone 3, could also be zone 2. It's when we get a little bit more specific about that pace that we want to try and run. And actually, we see if it is a possibility. So in this scenario right here, what I'm going to do is intervals at tempo. So I'm going to run 3 kilometers easy, 4 kilometers at tempo heart rate, 1 kilometer easy, 4 kilometers tempo heart rate, 3 kilometers easy. It's not a lot at tempo, but what it's going to tell me is that while I'm in zone 3, what is my pace? And it'll be a little bit dictated by the treadmill, so sometimes I'll go outside and do the same thing. So I've got to play around a little bit with the pace until I can get my heart rate to the right area. And then really, week on week, all I'm looking for in the tempo bit is what's my pace? If my pace is even around goal marathon pace, that's probably okay around here. If it's faster than, even better. Set my brain up to be in a comfortably hard zone for when I move on to marathon pace work.
And all that happens in the second half of the training cycle is that we switch from tempo heart rate sessions like this to goal marathon pace sessions, which is of course based on pace. And we see what the heart rate is doing at that pace. Again, the closer to zone 2 the better, but it is a process and it comes down as fitness grows, and it'll even get better after a good taper. Again, another 2 sessions of evidence to analyse and see if that 3:45 a kilometre is going to be realistic. At this stage it's looking positive. As we said before, the longer that you take to run a marathon, the longer you should really aim to stay in zone 2 before you creep into zone 3, because that's where you start to burn more carbs. And things like poor fueling can be really highlighted.
80 metres left of the efforts. Whew. This felt punchy. You know what the best thing about that session just now was? Still got my cool down, but at tempo, I'm at or faster than goal marathon pace. So that is an absolute benefit of using this session. Treadmill always feels worse though, doesn't it?
Okay, the final session that we use out of the 5 is the long run, and arguably probably the best indicator of where we're at because it's the most realistic, certainly when it comes to the marathon at least anyway, and probably half marathon. So when we do the long run, we have 3 options. We have to rule out personally 2 options immediately because we live in a furnace, but if I was living in a temperate climate, I'd have all 3 options at my disposal. The first one is you just do the long run at what feels like an easy, comfortable pace. And what I tend to find as I go through my training block is that easy, comfortable pace speeds up a little bit. So generally by the time I'm at the end of my training block, if I'm aiming for a pace of 3:45 per kilometre in my marathon, I'm probably getting in and around the 4 to 4:05 minutes per kilometre for the long run. And bear in mind, that's in the heat. So probably in the UK, it would be more like a 3:50, 3:55 per kilometre. That's the simplest one, you know, just you have a look at what is your comfortable, easy pace. I try and keep it always in zone 2. What does that equate to by the time I come to the taper? But for all of the people that I coach that don't live in a furnace, we also have 2 other options. We have the option of hotspots and the option of progressions. So with hotspots, what I sometimes do is I factor in periods at goal race pace within the long run so that I can see what's happening with the heart rate when we go to goal race pace. If I say go to goal race pace, 3 minutes 45 a kilometre, and when I do that within my long run, it takes me up to my lactate threshold, that's not goal race pace. That's not gonna work. When you're doing short periods of time at a race pace and you're already going too high, I have to rule that out. But if I'm low zone 3, high zone 2, then that's a realistic indicator that this might be a good pace for me to run. And if it comes down back into zone 2 after each of these hotspots, again, really good indicator. Or the other option is, of course, progressions, which we do with a lot of athletes. We try and build our way into the long run almost exactly like you would do with a marathon or a half marathon, because you're aiming to negative split, right? So let's take, for example, we have a 30-kilometer long run. This is just easy. Like, you do 10 kilometers easy, you might do 10 kilometers at just below race pace. You know, if it's a 3:45 for me, maybe you're aiming for 4 minutes kilometers to start with, and then maybe you do 10 kilometers at goal race pace, 3:45. And again, we come back and we look at the heart rate data. What's it saying? If it's saying that by the time I got to my goal race pace that I'm at lactate threshold and I'm going to explode, that's not a realistic pace for me to run. But if I'm at low zone 3 or high zone 2 in terms of where my heart rate is, then we're probably game on for when it comes to the race, because we've still got a taper to come, which is where the real magic and the freshening up happens. Now I have the 5 sessions that I can look at to either confirm or reject my hypothesis that I'm ready to run this pace. And I go through this system regardless of distance that I'm running, regardless of my age, regardless of anything. It is a scientific method that will tell me yes or no, and I can remove emotion from the process. So there you go, there's my process, there's my scientifically based method to make sure that on race day I'm running at a pace that I can sustain and will hopefully see me do very well. Now, whether it's the goal pace or goal time that I set out at the start of the process, that is a different matter altogether, but you've seen how I work through and I use the method to make sure that emotion is lower, and it's more just, did my training confirm what I thought or not? Simple as that. I love this process because it is emotionless. It is, I want a punchy goal and I'm now going to train to try and work towards it. Can I do it? Now, if it's looking like I can't run a 3:45 per kilometer, for an example, then what I'll do is I'll take a slight gamble and I'll just dial it back to, say, a 3:50 as a kilometer and see what happens in that race based on what the evidence is telling me. Or if I feel like I'm nowhere near, maybe 3:55. And if there's anything that I haven't explained within this video that you want more explanation to, just make sure you pop it in the comments, or even better, join our membership community, which is thriving. We've got a bunch of wonderful people in there that are all training towards their autumn marathons, or not even marathons, by the way, at the moment, half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks. This video, I'm hoping, has also convinced you to subscribe to the channel. No hard sell from me, but please consider it because it helps us hugely. And if you like this video, then you're either going to like the one where we start our Chicago marathon training so you can watch the journey in real time, or you're going to like this video, which is how we built Mary to multiple 100-kilometer weeks over time and safely. Thanks for watching the video. We'll see you next week.